Hello, my name is Marcus. I'm the compiler of a collection of therapy quotes entitled Psychoanalytic Self-Awareness Quotes. This is TQ 909, part 2 of 2. Therapy quote number 909, part 2 of 2. If we grow up in a home where the atmosphere is one of friendliness, understanding, tolerance, and a genuine desire in parents to encourage and not frustrate or merely make use of the children, we feel confident and at ease because there is a fundamental safety about life. We know from those experiences in the earliest and most impressionable years in life that good relationships really exist, that goodwill in human beings towards one another is a genuine fact. Because we will not approach people with suspicion and fear in the first place, we are in fact likely to draw the best out of many of them and find the world to be a much more friendly and helpful place than how someone else may find it. If, however, a child grows up in a home where parental attitudes are difficult and disturbing, then his whole outlook on life becomes warped. Underneath all other and later mental attitudes is a primary feeling of being alone, isolated, weak, and unhelped in the face of, quote, the world is an unfriendly place. This is what has come to be called basic anxiety. So the topic of anxiety is one of the threads in this series. We have about a dozen threads running throughout this series. So this one about anxiety, this part here about anxiety, so we can add to this thread. So mentioned in previous videos, one idea was that came from Masterson's axiom: self-activation leads to abandonment depression or massive anxiety, which then leads to the use of a defense mechanism to soothe the anxiety. So self-activation means the person wants to do something from their real self, but this triggers the memories of how when the person was a baby and they had a real wish from their real self, in a developmental trauma, that meant that got rejected. So that was painful. The child felt abandonment anxiety, okay, alone, isolated, weak, unhelped, and so on. Angry, scared, helpless, right? Abandonment. So abandonment anxiety, that's Masterson's umbrella term for a variety of unpleasant feelings when the child doesn't get his needs met. The theory is if the child needs love and the mother's not available, the theory is the child interprets this as being unwanted or rejected or devalued, exploited, and so on. So the feelings around that would be abandonment, depression, anger, and so on. And then the child is under a lot of stress. The mother may give the child a candy, so he's soothed that way. You see, so he gets love when he's distressed, but originally he wanted love and support to express his wish, to get a need met. He was activating his real self. That got rejected. Now he felt sad, and then the mother responded. Okay, so that's the axiom is based on that. Self-activation leads to massive anxiety or abandonment depression, which leads to defense. So if there's a developmental trauma in early childhood, then in later life, the person has a real wish. That triggers the memory of the babyhood time. That triggers the anxiety. Now the person consciously is not aware of why he's anxious. Remember, anxiety is fear of the unknown in the unconscious, right? So the anxiety, or another way of saying it is when there's anxiety, it's the unconscious memory of mother abandoning the baby or the mother refusing her love to the baby. So there's anxiety around that. And then to deal with the stress of that, the person may comfort themselves or use a defense mechanism like emotional eating or whatnot. So this idea about Bergler says he has a little bit different perspective. So Burglar, overly simplified and in a nutshell, Burglar's theory is that there's a repetition compulsion around the following. So let's say the baby has a wish for mother's love, step one. Let's say it gets refused. That's part two, step two. Now the baby wants to protest. He wants to express his anger or something, but the baby doesn't have the motor skills or the language skills. He really can't do it. So finally, that's step three, he can't protest. Finally, in step four, he feels somehow defeated or something. Now let's say that the memory of these four steps, let's personify the memory of these four steps and give it a name, the superego. So I'm just again keeping this overly abbreviated. Okay, so the superego remembers these four steps. Now there's a developmental trauma. When there's a developmental trauma, the person wants to recreate, relive, re-experience, to try to master it, get it right, and so on. So now as an adult, the person may have a genuine wish. The superego says no. That's steps 1 and 2. But this time, now the person's physically older, he has motor skills, he's going to protest. The superego says, well, all right, fine, you can protest, but it has to be like it has to be like a false protest or a pseudo protest, because he doesn't have he's not facing the genuine anger towards the mother. He's not aware of it. So if he's going to protest, it's got to be a fake protest. Now, if it's going to be a real protest, the person has to be aware of the four steps originally. So if he's unaware of the four steps, or he doesn't believe it, or he denies it, or he rejects the idea, then the person is going to engage in some kind of pseudo-aggression, Burglar calls it. But the result of that is that it leads to what he calls the unlived life. So that repeats the four steps in babyhood time. So in babyhood time, had a wish, got refused, wanted to protest, he couldn't, felt defeated. As an adult, wants to self-activate, he can't, now he's going to protest. But what's he protesting really? It's a repetition gone awry. You can't travel back in a time machine and protest against the mother from babyhood time. But he's going to project the frustrating mother onto non-threatening substitute others, let's say, or the world or whatever, and he's going to protest or be pseudo-assertive in the outer world somehow, thinking that he's being angry towards his mother. So there's some kind of a disconnect there. Now that's... So any kind of dysfunctional living would be a pseudo-protest, or wanting to show up the mother, or and then finally, because it's repetition compulsion gone awry, if he's not conscious of it, that can lead to the unlived life, just like in babyhood time he felt defeated. So that's a very challenging concept. A lot of people don't like it. Someone called it, if it's true, then maybe that's humanity's fourth narcissistic injury, if that's true. So remember, humanity's first narcissistic injury was Copernicus. He told everyone that the earth is not the center of everything. People didn't believe him, they got angry. And Darwin came along. And so that was an insult to people's narcissism, right? That the earth is not the center, that the earth moves around the sun and we're just a little star and all this. Then Darwin comes along and says, humans have a lot in common with nature. For example, if the baby's removed from the mother, and the baby's returned, the mother, just like in the animal world, might unconsciously reject the baby, not cognitively, but emotionally. So we have a lot in common with animals and things. We're not divine, supreme beings who came here on some celestial ship from some other dimension and we're so superior, or whatever it was, I don't know. So humanity's second narcissistic injury was Darwin saying we have a lot in common with nature. And then about 120, 30, 40 years, I guess so, 150 years ago, let's say, roughly, the idea was that we always knew there was an unconscious, but we never really talked about it much. But then it suddenly became popular. We started talking about it. What? There's an unconscious? We live in two worlds? There's such a thing as an unconscious? You mean the memories from childhood can affect us in the present? You mean we're influenced in the present by our childhood experiences? Nonsense, people would say. So that's humanity's third narcissism, that there is such a thing as internal object relations and unconscious and all that. Now, I guess people still, I don't know, maybe some people, there's models around the unconscious. So various models have been devised describing the unconscious. Burglar has his model, and Fairbairn and Masterson, they have their models, and Klein and Mahler, and there are other models of how the architecture of the subconscious, and that kind of thing. Because if we can be aware of the internal object relations world, that's kind of like witnessing ourselves. Grief is healed when it's witnessed by a caring other. So if we consider these models, we're kind of giving ourselves witness. We're being our own caring witness to ourselves. So these models help us to witness ourselves. See, when you own a projection, you're witnessing yourself, right? Like if you have a strong attitude towards somebody and you realize that's something that's a part of yourself from the inner world, that's unconscious, you're witnessing yourself, that kind of thing. When we say know thyself, know the conscious self and the unconscious self. The self is the totality, the body-mind totality of the conscious self and the unconscious self. So we have to know both sides. We live in two worlds, we have to know both worlds, right? Right. Okay, so back to Burglar's model there. That someone said that if Burglar's right, that if there's arrested development, meaning the child got an insecure attachment. So if the satisfying memories with the mother outweigh the frustrating memories with the mother, the child has a secure attachment style, and he's able to achieve the psychological birth. That's okay. At worst, he may have some slight neurotic traits or egocentric. That's not an issue, right? But if the frustrating memories with the mother outweigh the satisfying memories with the mother, that's arrested development. That's a developmental trauma. That's an insecure attachment style. The love has to outweigh the satisfying experiences. They need to outweigh the frustrating experiences for the child to achieve the psychological birth, because the more frustrating the mother is, the more rejecting the mother is, Fairbairn says, the more the baby needs the mother. He's going to cling to her even more because he needs to get mother's love to differentiate from her. She's the only source of love for him. And if she's unavailable, he's more desperate to cling towards the mother, to see if he can get enough love to ultimately differentiate from her, to know himself. If he's still stuck in a negative symbiosis or fusion or an unconscious struggle, or he's identified with the mother, he's become like her, he's stuck there with it, or he doesn't know himself. That means he didn't achieve the psychological birth. So that means love and gratitude haven't entered the psychological picture. Love and gratitude enter the psychological picture, the theory is, at around the age of 6 months. Okay, from birth to 6, that's the stage of symbiosis. To leave that egg, to hatch out of that egg, the person needs enough love. If they get enough love, then they hatch out. So if that takes place, we see that love and gratitude have entered the psychological picture. If that doesn't take place, and he's still stuck in this fusion with the mother, he's angry with the mother, battling with the mother, the main emotions are hate, greed, envy, or grenvy, schadenfreude, spite, vindictiveness, and so on, because he's stuck in this battle with the mother. Infantile megalomania is still there. Exaggerated grandiosity is still there as compensation, and so on. So Burglar's theory about anxiety is that he says that anxiety is when you don't square accounts with the superego. So the deal with the superego is the superego told the person, okay, so now you want to protest against your mother. Well, the deal is I'll let you protest, but it's got to be fake. If it's not fake, I'm going to make you, the superego is going to make the person anxious. You see? So as long as the person's living in a dysfunctional way, leading towards the unlived life, the superego is happy. The deep memory of the 4 steps, okay? So the superego is just an extension of nature's law, psychological law. If the theory is there's a law there from the psyche. If there's a trauma, the person wants to master it. But if he's not aware of it, he's not mastering it. If he's not aware of it, he repeats it like Sisyphus. So either we repeat and don't remember, or we are aware of it by talking about it, then we become more aware of it, then we can heal it. You know. So either we repeat and don't remember, or we talk and remember. So anxiety is, from Berger's point of view, when the person breaks the deal with the superego. The superego allowed the person to live a dysfunctional life. That's his way to be aggressive against his mother, but it's pseudo-aggression. It's fake. It's projected onto the wrong others or whatever, or some other outlet, or somehow emotional eating or dysfunctional living. You can see all of that's trying to get mother's love through the greed or through the envy and put mother down, or biting irony to put mother down. And so as long as the superego says, fine, if you want to battle with your mother in symbolic form and not be aware of it, fine. Now, once the person is aware of it, okay, now there's anxiety, because now he's bringing up the true memories that the true memories the person had when they were a baby of not receiving enough love. But he has to face the unconscious ambivalence with the mother somehow, right? So when we face the unconscious ambivalence with the mother, that she was loving and frustrating, but unfortunately more frustrating than loving, that means we go on the thought pattern that we are moving towards forgiving our parents. As mentioned in part 1, the parents may have had developmental trauma and they were psychologically incomplete, so they couldn't offer a secure attachment style. So that brings up the awareness and understanding of why we have why our internal object relations world is the way it is, where the rejecting image of the mother is stronger, let's say, than the loving image of the mother, because the frustrating experiences of her were more painful than the loving experiences. So in other words, right, so it's unbalanced there. So if we face the unconscious ambivalence, we can move towards balance and finally get to the point where the loving memories outweigh or the supporting that we're giving ourselves through our own witnessing and giving ourselves support and reparenting ourselves. We get to the point where our self-representation and the inner representation of the other supports our self-representation, and that side, let's say, then the love outweighs the unsatisfying experiences from the imago. Then the splits can come together. When the splits come together, we can differentiate out of the symbiotic orbit. That's called getting the key out from under mother's pillow. When Robert Bly says, get the key out from under mother's pillow, he's talking about differentiation. But in order to differentiate, in order to do that, you have to heal the splits. Splitting precludes differentiation. So you have to face the splits. To face the splits, you have to face that the person is denying their anger towards the mother, right? Or anger, that they're the side of her that was frustrating. They're denying that side of her. They're accepting the loving side of her, but they're denying the frustrating side of her. Right? What's called the splitting defense. You have to see the mother as a realistic whole person caught in their existential dilemma. Forgiveness of the other, okay, that's healing the splits. Reparation of the other leads to reparation of the self, so the self images come together. We're healing the fragmented soul. That leads to differentiation. Once differentiation takes place, now we have an image of the other as a whole person and the image of the self as a whole person. Now that's giving ourselves psychological birth. Man's main task is to give psychological birth to himself if he didn't get it at the age of 3. With the secure attachment style, the child gets it naturally. So he's the fortunate one, right? I mentioned in that part 1 here. The first part of this quote said here, right? As likely as not, the habitually apprehensive attitude to life goes back to the fact that the client has been more starved of parental love and understanding in childhood than the more fortunate ones who have no or little neurosis, right? So those other ones got the secure attachment style, so they got the psychological birth. Their marriages are like fine wine. Right? But if a person didn't get the psychological birth, if their relationships are becoming like sour milk and all that, or they have prejudice and these kinds of things are always, if they're cynical, sarcastic, and their humor is constantly put down humor, if they're negative that way, that means they didn't get enough love. Okay, and they're angry about it, and that's why they're angry. Anger means you didn't get the love. Right? The natural state of affairs is to be loved, and then to have the psychological birth. You're relaxed and at ease, and you have the full range of being a human being of goodwill, and there's good relationships and mutuality. So when the mother doesn't see the child as a person in their own right, if the mother forgets the reality of her child as a person in their own right, not to blame the mother, then we theorize that the child interprets that as being devalued, unloved, objectified, exploited, and so on. And then what the child might do is they might identify with the aggressor. That's a narcissistic pattern, when the child becomes like the mother. So if the mother exploited the child, and the child grows up and then exploits others, he's doing that to communicate that when he was a baby, his mother exploited him. He's doing to others what his mother did to him to communicate what his mother did to him. That's the psyche's attempt to get the person's conscious ego to be aware of what happened. Right? Grief is healed when it's witnessed by a caring other. The psyche wants us to be our own caring other. So the unconscious ego is projecting internal object relation images onto others, or self-represented images onto others, and you're distorting reality because no one in the present is your mother or yourself when you were a baby. But that's what the person's sort of doing to get the person's conscious ego to be aware and own their projections, to see the internal object relations world. So Klein says we live in two worlds: the inner psychological emotional world, and there are the characters there as a metaphor, fantasized personifications. Again, the memories condense, form images. These images become imagos. They're infused with the child's emotions, so they're exaggerated because of his small size and the mother's giantess. And the unconscious ego has a relationship with these constellations within. So there's internal object relations. Now, internal object relations, the more wounded it is there, the more they're going to be projected into external interpersonal relationships in the present, in an attempt to get the person to see what his internal object relations is like. You see? Okay, so so the first part here of it is, if we grow up in a home where the atmosphere is one of friendliness, understanding, tolerance, and a genuine desire in parents to encourage and not frustrate or merely make use of the children, okay, we feel confident and at ease because there is a fundamental safety about life. Okay, so one of the threads in this series is the Costa mothering style. So we've been saying several times throughout the series that the parents are there to meet the needs of the child. If it's the other way around, and the mother is using the child so that to get the child to meet her mother's needs, her needs, that's called the Jocasta style of mothering. So that means the child doesn't know himself because he's so busy trying to please the mother. And the theory there is that the mother thinks that when they were a child, they didn't get their needs met. Finally, they have this person here. They're going to project the mother, their need for a mother, onto the baby, and they're going to manipulate that baby to meet her needs. Now the mother thinks, finally someone's going to do what I say, listen to me, meet my needs, respond to me, validate me, see me. If I have a need, they're going to respond to me. That's called the Jocasta style of mothering. Okay. Now, you see, now that child dealing with that's a wound to the child. That means his key is being held by the mother. Robert Bly says, get the key out from under mother's pillow. Okay. So if we consider that the mother may have used the Jocasta style of mothering, that's an idea to consider about how to get the key out from under mother's pillow, to differentiate from her. So again, it's not to blame the mother. If she didn't get her needs met, she's in a compulsion to try to get her needs met, to master her trauma. That's what's called intergenerational trauma. She got an insecure attachment style. Now she has her own family. She's gonna, it's like a second chance kind of thing. But now her actual mother's not around, so now she's gonna project her mother onto the baby and get the baby, i.e. her mother, to meet her needs finally. It's a delusion. It's pathological. What's it called? Pathological repetition. Repetition compulsion gone awry. It can't be done. No little baby can be that mother's mother. It's impossible, you know. But that's what the mother's trying to do. The mother wants to use that baby as a comforter, as a security blanket, as the reason for, you know, the mother may even sabotage the child from doing their homework because the child is terrified if the child becomes autonomous, if the child leaves her, triggers her separation anxiety. Or sometimes, Rinsley says, sometimes the mother will encourage the child's cognitive skills on the condition that the child be psychologically bonded to her. So that he calls that a split between the cognitive development and emotional psychological arrested development. He thinks there's a split that. So that's why you have scientists who are still mama boys. Well, why would a scientist who's so intelligent still be a helpless little baby to the mother or something like that? So that's the theory about why some people are cognitively skillful or they appear knowledgeable and all that. That's because the mother made a deal with the baby. All right, I'll let you be successful in school. That'll prop up my narcissism to glow and bask in your. But you're not going to leave me emotionally. You may even marry someone, but your first love is to me, she says, that kind of thing. And then the guy's wife feels like, you're not really here in this relationship. You're really in love with your mother. You're not really. So there's a self-help book called When He's Married to Mom. Talks about this by a guy named Adams. So if this happens, the mother is using the child, making use of the child, not encouraging the child's psychological autonomy. So Masterson makes this clear. He says how the mother does this, makes the baby dependent on her psychologically, is that when the baby's helpless and weak, she rewards him and comforts him and smothers him and showers him with attention when he's weak. Now, when he tries to be autonomous, she withdraws her support. The child needs mother's support to complete the separation individuation process to achieve the psychological birth. The child needs mother's love and support to achieve the psychological birth. The mother can refuse that, thereby preventing the child from achieving the psychological birth. If the child doesn't achieve the psychological birth, that means he's still psychologically, emotionally fused and fixated on the mother. That means the mother has the child as her, to be acting in the role of her mother endlessly, really. Lucy Holmes talks about this in her book, The Internal Triangle. Interesting theory there. And there's a lot of material about the Jocasta style of mothering, Anything that talks about the mama complex or the mama boy syndrome, all of that pretty much deals with it. Remember, myths and fairy tales are metaphor for a lot of these things, Okay, let's say the child has a secure attachment style. He got enough love. Love and gratitude have entered the psychological picture. If love and gratitude have entered the psychological picture, he sees things in that natural state. That's the healthy state. So he looks at others in a friendly way, and that may, in many cases, help others to calm down, and it brings out the best in others. So that person's living in a more friendly world. But if the person with a person with any kind of pattern where there's developmental trauma before differentiation, so that's the narcissistic pattern, the closet narcissistic pattern, the hostile provocative style, hiding behind power struggles as a character defense, the schizoid pattern resembling the character Iago from literature, the symbiotic character disorder, and a few others, they're operating out of hate, envy, greed, envy, grenvy, spite, vindictiveness, schadenfreude, and so on. So they're approaching the world through those primary emotions. entitlement and extravagant grandiosity, infantile megalomania. Cynicism gratifies infantile megalomania. Now, if they're the narcissistic pattern, they're putting others down because the mother put them down from the baby's perspective. That's how the child interprets the mother not loving them. They feel put down, so they do to others what was done to them. Hurt people, hurt people. The person with the hostile, provocative style, what's said about that is that they prematurely hatched out of the symbiotic egg. They were in the egg, but then they were prematurely hatched out. Now they want to go back in. So they're trying to find someone else to fuse with them, to be their mother, to finish the symbiotic stage. The child needs enough love to differentiate. If he didn't get that, he might become hostile and provocative towards others. So actually, but he's doing that for his own ego to know. That's what one author said, for him to see that that's the situation. That's what he's doing. That's why he's being like that. He didn't get his symbiotic needs met. And then that schizoid character, he's withdrawn. His self, his emotions are very much withdrawn, and so he's more about envy, and he's the guy, the Iago character from literature. He's the one that secretly does things behind the scenes to get others against themselves, and he enjoys the show because everything is envy. You see, he projects the world. He projects the mother onto the world, and he wants to see the world spoiled, or people around him spoiled. And if he does, he feels, now from that point of view, we're saying that's emotional sadism, if it's from the Iago character from literature, the Shakespeare character, Iago. So if a person has that pattern, there's that. At least with the narcissistic pattern, they have some hope for love because of their greed. Their greed is symbolic. This was the fourth part here. Okay, the fourth part here. The mind can distract its attention from emotional conflict by generating physical symptoms and worrying over them. Okay, so the body bears the burden. In the personal life, when the individual cannot achieve a true sense of emotional intimacy in a relationship, he will feel a compulsion to make do with greed, using others, right? Objectifying others. This symbolizes the emotional longing for a personal relationship. See, at least with the narcissistic pattern, he's greedy because he is able to stay in touch with his unconscious memory that when he was a baby, he wanted love. So he's staying in touch that when he was a baby, he wanted enough mother's love. He never got it. Now, in the narcissistic pattern, he's hateful and greedy, and he wants to grab everything. Klein calls it introjective destructiveness. He wants to own and possess things. See, the baby just wanted to receive love. To master the trauma, the person thinks, I better own whatever is symbolic of love. So he's greedy, he's possessive. Now, you see, there's a link there between his greed and him staying in touch with the deep memory that when he was a baby, he wanted mother's love. So he's greedy, so he's actively trying to get mother's love through his greed, right? Now, it's insatiable because the person with the narcissistic pattern is chasing an image called an inexhaustible flow of goodness. Because from the baby's point of view, the baby thinks, the theory is that this is an inexhaustible flow of goodness until he gets satiated, but the baby never got satiated. Now, in greed as an adult, he wants to get satiated, but it's a repetition compulsion gone awry. It's pathological repetition. It can't be done. But that's what he's trying to do. See, he's trying to become satiated, but it can't be done after the age of 5 at the latest, let's say. But that's why it's Sisyphus. He's repeating and reenacting and reliving the baby trauma again with his greed. His greed is reliving and reenacting the baby trauma of not getting enough love. But at least there's a connection there. Now with the schizoid pattern, apparently, that Iago character, he's more removed from that wish. I mean, in theory it's there somewhere, but in practicality, he's much more removed from the wish that when he was a baby he wanted love. So he's very detached. That's the extreme end of the schizoid pattern. Now all he has, what's left after the greed is the envy. Now back to the narcissistic pattern. When the person with the narcissistic pattern sees something that represents goodness and he can't own it, he's reminded that he didn't get enough love. Now he hates it. So envy means hatred of the good. So now if he sees the goodness spoiled, whatever that goodness is, or whatever, however it's expressed, if he sees it spoiled or damaged, he feels gleeful. That's Schadenfreude, right? Because he's relieved of the stress of being reminded he didn't get enough love when he was a baby. So there's some people call it grenvy. First he's greedy, and then he's envious. So they go together like that. If he can possess it, there's the grenvy. There's the greed. If he can't possess it, there's the envy. So this together he's calling it grenvy. And then if you question him about it, he'll be spiteful and vindictive, because that's his identity. He's identified with the aggressor, so he's got to preserve his infantile megalomania. His identity is this extravagant, entitled infantile megalomania, right? Now with the schizoid pattern, the theory is he doesn't bother with the greed part. He bypasses it and just goes straight to the envy. Now he wants to see, now everything outside of him represents goodness. So he's envious about almost everything, right? So he's always trying to see it spoiled somehow. But he's detached, so he does it behind the scenes kind of thing. There's another pattern from there called hiding behind power struggles as a character defense pattern. I'm not sure, but I think that's the battle with the feeding. Now in future life, he wants to get into arguments with others to master that argument he had with the feeding with the mother. So he likes arguments because he thinks he's connecting to his mother and he's maybe winning his mother's love, but he's trying to master that trauma with the feeding with the mother. Right? So all of these patterns means that they approach the world with the Einstein quote, is the world a friendly place or not? So they think, no, the world is not a friendly place, because the mother, the breast, the feeding, the mother wasn't friendly. So they think, they project that, no, the universe is not friendly. So they're in battle with their mother by projecting her externally. So we had that quote before about externalizing our problems here. So that third part here, the last part was about that. Okay, the third part again, the state of the mind, conscious and unconscious, affects, often with astonishing rapidity, the sympathetic or involuntary nervous system and the interrelated team of endocrine glands, and through them the entire working of the body in its general biochemical processes and in the special functioning of its separate parts, organs, and systems. One has seen people in middle life go as thin as a rake, shown an ashen gray parlor, and be so exhausted around basic areas of living. Very few people, when they get a headache, ask, quote, what am I anxious about? They practically always look for some purely physical explanation. That is one of the signs of our unwillingness to know too much about ourselves. We prefer to externalize our troubles. Okay, again, we prefer to externalize our troubles, to push them out of our personalities onto the body or onto the world or onto outside things, right? So that's the moral revolution, is to look within and stop projecting onto it. So that one there about being morally, or is that morally cowardly? So that fifth one here talked about, again, the fifth one here. If we are hostile, we easily assume that other people are unfriendly to us. The recognition of this fact may of itself serve to release a mind from much fear. If we fail to learn true objectivity in our judgments of people, our own state of mind may remain too exclusively the basis of our beliefs about others. We may have some fault or bad quality against which we feel critical and intolerant. we are quick to see it in someone else. We may find it so hard to tolerate perception of anything unlikable in ourselves that we come to ignore it, refuse to recognize its meaning as part of our own behavior, rationalize it, and justify it. In time, we may become actually oblivious to our own failings and able to permit ourselves to see them only in other people. We affirm in them what we deny in ourselves. With projection, we are really trying to get rid of something out of our own character, not by the only realistic method of undergoing a change in ourselves, but by the unrealistic and morally cowardly method of pushing it out into someone else. Okay, so Wilson said the moral revolution is to own your projections. The moral revolution is to, if you're projecting, to see that that's what you're denying about yourself. Prejudice is confession. Prejudice is confession that you have unconscious ambivalence with the mother and you don't want to admit it. Because maybe in the narcissistic pattern, the person is the mother. You see, if the baby and the mother are fused and the baby becomes the mother and they're fused there, how does he differentiate? How does he leave the mother if he's her? How does he can't, let alone, so think about mourning. How do you mourn the loss of her if you're her? So you feel like you're mourning the loss of yourself? It can't be done. You have to differentiate. You have to get the key out from under mother's pillow. Okay? So Robert Bly, the whole men's movement was based on that. Get the key out from under mother's pillow to differentiate. But in order to differentiate, you first have to acknowledge the possibility that when the person was a baby, that the mother may have used the Jocasta style of mothering, that the person may have developed an insecure attachment style. They may have arrested development. From birth to 6 months, if there's arrested development there, Bergler calls that a fixation at the rejection level of not getting enough love to differentiate. Now, if the person did differentiate and they achieved the arrested development between 6 months and 36 months, that's called a fixation at the rejection level of not getting enough support to complete the separation individuation process. So people with the codependent pattern are maybe a little bit further along, let's say, but they're emotional and hysterical a little bit because they're always projecting the good mother because they had the experience of the good mother. They project the good mother onto the world and they think they idealize things too much. And then they berate themselves because they keep that within. So may I refer you to earlier videos about Fairbairn's 4 techniques. So Fairbairn says that with the splitting defense mechanism, you have the satisfying mother, unsatisfying mother. The codependent pattern, what they do is they project the satisfying image of the mother onto others, and they keep within the rejecting image of the mother. So they're hysterical that way. They overvalue others and they berate them and they undervalue themselves because they're berating themselves emotionally. Now, with arrested development in the earlier phase, from birth to 6 months, they do the opposite. They don't have good enough mother to project outward. And the mother was too rejecting and frustrating. So they have to see the world. So they project the rejecting side of the mother onto the world. That's called the paranoid technique. And then they think, so what they do for themselves is what's called extravagant grandiosity. Infantile megalomania is still there, so they will amp up their, they will cling to the baby's infantile megalomania, that he's a little god. Remember babies, what's called infantile megalomania. So remember, babies in the womb, we ask ourselves, if the baby were to have thoughts about his experience in the womb, what might he think? So the theory is we imagine maybe he thinks he's a little god because all of his needs are met. It's all about him. He's the center of the universe. Wow, he's so powerful. Magic man. Huh? Okay, and then after birth, that's still there. He's so powerful, so important, so entitled. He's a little god. Now, if there's arrested development at that stage, the person holds on to that little god thing called extravagant grandiosity, infantile megalomania. So he identifies himself with his own infantile megalomania, and others are the bad mother. That's called the paranoid technique. So this is the this is just one theory about emphasis on the word technique. We're not labeling anybody. Emphasis on, so we're not talking about cognitive perception. We're talking about the emotional realm, right? So yesterday's video talked a little bit about the techniques, Fairbairn's technique. Yesterday or the day before, one of those two. Okay. So Karen Horney uses the phrase, if anybody has an insecure attachment style, in general, let's just say that's basic anxiety. So that's her jargon for it, simple phrase there, basic anxiety. That the inner child feels alone, wounded, weak, isolated, unhelped. And there are different techniques to deal with this. Either you'd use the paranoid technique and then see the world as an unfriendly place, or you use the sweet lemons technique and see the world as a friendly place. So you rationalize, and the person can keep using these techniques. They can only be healed when we face the unconscious ambivalence with the mother. That's why the suggestion was offered that on Mother's Day, that's the day when mothers come clean and write letters to their adult children. The truth about the birth, the truth about the feeding, the truth about the first 3 years. The mother can talk about, maybe she didn't have a secure attachment style. Talk about her child, what she knows. Anyways, the mother can help her own child heal. If the mother can come clean and confess and tell what happened. A lot of mothers won't do that. Robert Blythe says, well, then you're responsible. You have to confront the mother and insist that they tell you what happened. Often they'll deny it, and no, everything was perfect. Oh, what are you complaining about? They'll shame you for asking. You see, they're in deep denial. That means they're very much wounded. They're deep. If they can't offer any kind of even late in life, they're not willing to help their own children heal. They're very much in deep denial themselves. So we forgive our parents. So we recognize that our parents were psychologically incomplete, that they didn't receive that love and gratitude, maybe didn't enter their psychological picture. You know, maybe if they're curmudgeons, that's often the case. They didn't mourn losses and that kind of thing. On Father's Day, the same thing. You know. Okay. Okay, so maybe we'll just close on so these are all just ideas, reflections, these quotes. The past few days have all primarily have been quotes from the work of Harry Guntrip. Guntrip was a student of Fairbairn. So he, added some clarity to what his mentor taught him. So that was helpful to us. You know, Guntrip and David Solani and Masterson, of course, that's great that they helped explain this internal object relations world, you know. So we live in two worlds. When we heal the inner world, the physical, external world is a friendlier place. So just close on a song here. Earlier, we played a song from the band Delirium called Saboteur. There was a line in there. The line was, you are what you disguise, blame is only a compromise. She was talking about rationalizations. So from this band Delirium, here's another song called Truly. So I'll play a bit of that here. relations, and she wants to find the pearl inside, she said. Okay, so the first part of the quote here was about giving ourselves compassion. If a person is dysfunctional or neurotic, that means he has unconscious fear in his internal object relations world. That means the memories of being unsatisfied with the mother outweigh the memories of being satisfied with her. That leads to neurosis, dysfunctional living, dysfunctional behavior, because we're trying to master that. That's why it's dysfunctional. You're distorting the present in the attempt to heal that. That's what he's saying. So if a person is dysfunctional, it doesn't call for criticism and condemnation, but rather it calls for investigation and understanding. What is the cause of the dysfunctional behavior? What form is this dysfunctional behavior taking? What is the insecure attachment style? Is it anxious, avoidant, hostile, provocative, dissociative? What effects is it having on the person? How is it affecting their behavior, their health? Right? The real answer is not to ignore this question, but to self-reflect, to readjust, he says, to heal the internal object relations world. Right? And if there is a lot of unconscious anxiety, that can affect the endocrine glands. It can affect the involuntary nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system. It can affect the biochemical processes and the functioning of the organs. Right? For example, some people in midlife, he said here he saw a client who was thin as a rake. Another client, his skin tone was ashen gray parlor, because he had very shallow breathing. Apparently this client was breathing very shallowly, like in a very shallow way. If he were to walk a flight of stairs, he'd be out of breath or something. And so apparently, I looked it up, apparently if the person's not getting enough oxygen to the blood, that can lead to an ashen gray skin tone, apparently. I didn't know that. Or if it's just generally lethargic, right? So the mysterious leap between the mind and the body he's talking about. So a lot of psychosomatic symptoms arise because we ignore the psychological side of our health. We just look at the physical side of health, the things, the concrete, what we can see. We often ignore the invisible side of psychological health, So psychological health has many components, right? Spiritual, emotional, psychological, mental, psychic health, right? As well as the bodily, physical health. And he makes the point here, how many people do you know when they get a headache ask themselves, what am I worried about? Where does this headache coming from? They run to the cabinet and maybe take some, take something to alter their chemistry that way. That's called spiritual bypassing, by the way. Maybe sometimes it's necessary, but ideally, why not ask? Why not consider? If the person has a headache, maybe he can think to himself, what's he stressed about? What's going on? Maybe that would be the unconscious trying to tell the person and their conscious to see a therapist, to talk about it. And Gunther extrapolated this idea with relationships. First, we want a loving relationship with others. He says if that doesn't happen, for example, with the narcissistic pattern, he's saying they may move that to the body, externalize it. So the relationship is more about utilizing, utilitarian relationships. They're usually utilizing, so it's not really emotionally connected there. So that's the discussion about Peer Gynt and Puer and the Don Juan syndrome and the Playboy syndrome and all these characters that are afraid of intimacy, right? But he's saying here, that's a sign of a longing for emotional love, right? That's Truly by Delirium. Underappreciated band, yeah? Play it again. Okay, and then this other part here was about projection. And we mentioned in part 1 the baby and the mother are fused. So if the baby's sending a feeling to the mother, if the mother doesn't respond, there's a trauma there. It's frozen. Now, in later life, the person who wants to send his feelings to others, and he wants the others to get it. But now he's going to be more proactive. He wants others to really understand or to feel what he's not feeling. Now, if he has a character trait or something about, or belief or something about himself he doesn't know, he may try to insist that the other person take it. So the prototype was the baby wanted to send his mother the message. Now, with the frozen and repetition compulsion in adult time, chronological adult, he's going to adopt that same infantile defense mechanism by seeing the other as owning and possessing what he's denying himself, with the fantasy that that other person can own it and have it and possess it. Like in babyhood time, the mother possessed the feeling and then responded. You see? That's an interesting point. I really, this, 1, 2, 3, 4, this fifth part here, if you're only going to read one part of this quote, I recommend this fifth part here. And he's saying, that's a good quote. Why don't we do that one more time here? I think it's worth a read through again. If we are hostile, we easily assume that other people are unfriendly to us. The recognition of this fact may of itself serve to release a mind from much fear. If we fail to learn true objectivity in our judgments of people, our own state of mind may remain too exclusively the basis of our beliefs about them. We have some fault or bad quality against which we feel critical and intolerant. We are quick to see it in someone else. We find it so hard to tolerate perception of anything unlikable in ourselves that we come to ignore it. Refuse to recognize its meaning as part of our own behavior, rationalize it, and justify it. In time, we may become actually oblivious to our own feelings and able to permit ourselves to see them only in other people. I mean, that part is well written. He says here, and then we are only able to permit ourselves to see what's a part of ourselves. We are only able to see it as existing in other people. The only way to know yourself is through your judgment of other people. Prejudice is confession. Projection is confession. These strong ideas or philosophies or attitudes towards others, that's confession of what you're denying, of what we're denying in ourselves, right? So the mental hygiene movement was about owning your projections. Laughlin calls it a mirror defense. You're projecting onto others. That's like creating a mirror for yourself to see what you're denying in yourself, right? The last part of this was, we affirm in them what we deny in ourselves. With projection, we are really trying to get rid of something out of our own character, not by the realistic method of undergoing change in ourselves, but by the unhealthy and morally cowardly method of pushing it out into someone else. Okay, so to put it directly, something like prejudice, that's being morally cowardly. Kristen says the moral revolution is to own our projections, to heal our internal object relations world, to get the key out from under mother's pillow, to face the unconscious ambivalence with the mother, heal the splits, forgive the mother, bring the splits together, then we differentiate, get the key out from under mother's pillow, we reach the psychological birth, and then we have access to the capacities of the real self. So we're doing for ourselves what our parents didn't do. We're doing for ourselves what our parents, we're healing from what the parents did to us, basically. Okay, so I'll leave it here. So thank you very much. This has been TQ909. Bye for now. The song is Truly by Delirium. One more time. Want to hear it again? I guess I'll just play a part of it. Yeah, what was the line in the song? Why be afraid of yourself if when you were born you were given a self? You were given a true self when you were born. Why be afraid of it? Well, if you are afraid of it, that's taking responsibility for our own healing. She says there's a pearl within. That's the metaphor for the true self. But the pearl is in the unconscious. So the pearl is in the bag we drag behind us. Robert Bly has this metaphor that by the age of 5, so much of who we are gets put into this bag we drag behind us. Our pearl, our feeling self, our pathway to the psychological birth, knowledge of which defense mechanisms we're using, that gets put into the bag. Knowledge of what happened to us gets put in the bag. Knowledge of which insecure attachment style we're using gets put into the bag. So much of who we are and so much knowledge about ourselves gets put into this bag. Our emotional freedom got put into this bag. Now this bag we drag behind us, Robert Bly says we spend the rest of our lives trying to get the contents back out. He means trying to reintegrate those parts back, to re-own and reintegrate them back into ourselves. Right? Now this bag we drag behind us is sometimes called the second self of who we are, or the second self of the unconscious. Sometimes it's called the secret self, or the stranger within. It's the one who walks with us, who's not like us, but who is us. Someone's living my life and I know nothing about him, says one poet. In literature, it's the motif of the double. Someone called it the shadow soul. Someone called it the skeleton. You want to invite the skeleton and have a seat, give him the best seat at the fireplace. Treat him as an honored guest who had a right to be. He's a wise teacher. He's you. And you want to reintegrate him back into your life. So we want to make the unconscious conscious. Now all the energy in this bag, we can call that the energy, all of the energy in the bag we can call the id, or the unconscious. So we want to make where id was, ego shall be. Where unconscious was, consciousness shall be. That's reintegrating what we don't know about ourselves back into ourselves. That's the moral revolution. To re-own what we disowned in childhood. To re-own what we disowned in childhood. That's the moral revolution. That's taking responsibility for ourselves, for our inner child, for our unconscious. Berger says it very directly. He says, you're responsible for your unconscious. Like, wow, that's quite a statement, I thought. But he speaks very directly in his books. It seems in the 50s they had a lot of emotional freedom in their writing, right? And the pearl is in the bag. She's talking about the pearl. You want to find the pearl. The pearl is in the bag. The pearl in the bag, the real self is in the bag. But how do you get to the real self? You gotta know more about yourself. Face the unconscious ambivalence. Differentiate. Achieve the psychological birth. Then you have access to the pearl, the emotional freedom. And then we find our true self. The song is called Truly. The song is, we find our true self. The false self is what the baby adopted to protect his true self, not to replace it. Winnicott says the true self is there to protect the truth. The false self is there to protect the true self, not replace it. Sometimes we accidentally think the false self is the true self. Okay, so then we lost the pearl, or the pearl is in the bag. But it's still in the bag, so we're carrying it with us. So know thyself. Know both the conscious self and the unconscious self. Okay, this time I'll leave it here for sure. So thank you very much. This has been TQ 909. More to follow. Bye for now. Thanks again.